3 seconds. That's all it took for Patricia Sloan, the Aero Vantage gate agent, to decide Terrence Vaughn, the black man in a flawless Tom Ford suit, didn't belong in the first-class lounge. Never mind the platinum card, the calm composure, or the quiet confidence. All she saw was his skin. "Security," she whispered, her eyes narrowing with practiced suspicion. No one in the lounge spoke up. No one objected, except for one young intern, hands trembling as he typed, "They just kicked out the CEO of Vaughn Dynamics." Terrence didn't argue. He simply pulled out his phone and said quietly, "Activate Protocol Obsidian. Begin observation mode." As the security door closed behind him, Aero Vantage had no idea they just declared war on a man who had spent a lifetime preparing for this very moment. Before we dive back into the story, drop a comment and let me know where you're tuning in from. And if compelling stories like this are your thing, make sure to hit that follow. Tomorrow's episode is going to be unforgettable. The automatic doors of Washington National Airport sighed open as Terrence Vaughn stepped inside, the wheels of his carry-on gliding silently over the polished floor. It was 8:47 a.m. on a crisp Tuesday morning, and he had precisely 43 minutes until boarding. He moved like a man who didn't rush, but never wasted a second. Custom Tom Ford suit, sharp enough to make a paper cut. Cufflinks of polished platinum, each engraved with the initials TVA, subtle nod to his first billion. Terrence had never been a fan of flashy. If it sparkled, screamed, or had to be explained, it wasn't his style. Power, he believed, was best served in quiet confidence, the kind that made people straighten their backs and wonder, who the hell is that guy? Apparently, Patricia Sloan didn't wonder long. She saw him the second he stepped into the priority check-in area, eyes flicking up from her gossip magazine. Stars Without Makeup, a classic. The moment their eyes met, something in her expression stiffened. It was subtle, calculated, like someone shifting gears into the role of mall cop in an action movie no one asked for. Terrence approached the counter, handing over his ID and boarding pass with a polite smile. "Morning," he said. Patricia took the documents with the sort of careful reluctance one might use for a suspicious package. She stared at the name on the ID, Terrence Vaughn. She said it like she was trying to place it, like maybe he was a contestant on a game show that got canceled after one episode. "Are you traveling alone today, sir?" she asked, eyes narrowing. The pause before "sir" was a millimeter too long. "I am," Terrence replied evenly. "And this is, business or pleasure?" "Business." "I see." Her fingers hovered above the keyboard, but didn't type. "And your destination?" "San Francisco." That seemed to unlock something. Her brow arched. "That's a very competitive route," she murmured, almost to herself. "Lots of important folks flying that one." Terrence didn't respond. He didn't need to. She glanced down at his boarding pass again. First class, seat 1A. The best seat on the plane? The seat with legroom that made NBA players weep. Her lips tightened. Then came the look. That classic, barely masked suspicion he'd come to know all too well. The look that said, "You don't look like someone who belongs here, so now I need a story that makes this make sense. For me." She ran the ID under the scanner 3 times. It beeped correctly every time. "You mind waiting just a moment?" she asked, not really asking. "Of course," Terrence replied. She leaned over to whisper something to her younger colleague, a red-headed woman named Kelsey, who'd been quietly eating oatmeal from a Tupperware container the whole time. Kelsey's eyes widened slightly. She looked at Terrence, then back at Patricia, then just froze, spoon midair. "Wait," Patricia hissed a little too loud. "That's the guy from that startup. Vaughn, something." Kelsey blinked. "You mean the Vaughn? Vaughn Dynamics?" "I thought he was taller," Patricia muttered, squinting at Terrence like he might grow a few inches if she stared hard enough. Meanwhile, Terrence stood calmly. He'd learned long ago that silence was a language, one that made people uncomfortable, one that let them talk themselves into corners while you waited with a smile. A few feet behind him, a well-fed man in golf gear leaned over to his travel buddy and the stage whispered, "Must be trying to upgrade with points." His friend chuckled. "Nah, probably one of those guys who wins a contest or something." Look at that briefcase. Bet you it's empty. Terrence heard it all. He always did. He kept standing. Patricia finally returned and handed him his boarding pass with the kind of smile used at funerals, polite but utterly joyless. "You're all set, Mr. Vaughn," she said with just enough edge to imply that she'd allowed it. "Appreciate it," Terrence said, as if she'd just handed him a coupon for a free bagel. The walk to the first-class lounge was smooth, except for the usual stairs, the slow double takes, the subtle side glances that lingered just a second too long. Some folks smiled, polite, confused, unsure if they knew him from Forbes or a failed reality show. Terrence didn't mind. He understood visibility came with cost. What he hadn't expected was what happened next. The first-class lounge stood before him, quiet lighting, brushed metal finishes, and the unmistakable scent of free espresso and overcompensation. At the podium stood a young man named Ryan, no older than 22, with a side part and optimism you could bottle. "Good morning, sir. May I see your boarding pass and ID?" Terrence reached into his breast pocket, and that's when Patricia reappeared, like a magician popping out of a hat, a petty bureaucratic rabbit. "I'll take it from here, Ryan," she said, cutting in front of him. Ryan blinked. "Oh, sure?" She turned to Terrence, arms crossed. "Boarding pass and ID again, please." No smile this time, just authority. Terrence handed over his documents again without comment. She examined them like she was appraising a stolen Picasso. Turned the boarding pass over, squinted, tapped something into her iPad that wasn't even turned on. Then came the line, "This ticket seems a little unusual." Terrence raised an eyebrow. "Unusual? These seats cost a lot," she said bluntly. "We just need to make sure everyone's in their proper place." Behind him, a white man in khakis snorted. "Maybe he got lost. Coach is that way." He pointed helpfully. No one laughed, but no one stopped him either. Terrence looked back at Patricia. "I assure you," he said, voice smooth as bourbon, "this is my seat." "We'll see," she said. "I'm calling security." She turned her back to him and picked up the phone. That's when the intern, Malik, watching nearby in his neatly pressed AeroVantage vest, dropped his phone in disbelief. His hero, being treated like a threat, like a liar. And not for the first time, Terrence Vaughn realized how quickly skin erased everything else. The suit, the company, the billions, the name on the building. In 3 seconds, Patricia Sloan had made her judgment. And in 3 words, Terrence Vaughn had made his decision. Activate Protocol Obsidian. And just like that, the quiet man they tried to dismiss became the storm they never saw coming. Terrence Vaughn sat quietly in the small windowless security room just past the lounge. The cheap vinyl chair creaked beneath him, and the hum of the fluorescent lighting overhead reminded him of a dentist's office, or worse, a DMV. Across from him, security supervisor Ronald Grant, a tall man with salt and pepper hair and the posture of a retired Marine, was reviewing Terrence's documents for what had to be the 4th time. "I appreciate your cooperation, Mr. Vaughn," Grant said, his voice low and steady. "Just a routine check. I'm sure you understand." Terrence offered a small nod, his expression unreadable. Of course. He understood all right. He understood far too well. This wasn't the first time. Wouldn't be the last. The specifics changed. Different airport, different gate agent, different excuse. But the pattern? That never changed. Black man, first class, suit too sharp, smile too calm. And suddenly the system needed verification. Grant studied Terrence with the uneasy look of someone who recognized exactly who he was, but couldn't quite say it out loud. "Everything seems to be in order here," Grant finally said, handing back the documents with a tight, almost apologetic smile. "We'll get you on your way." "Thank you," Terrence replied, slipping the ID and boarding pass back into his wallet, right next to his Black American Express Centurion card. The kind of card that practically screamed, "I'm not here to play." But before he stood, he reached into his breast pocket and pulled out his phone. A single press on the side, and the secure AI interface lit up silently. "Protocol Obsidian," he said, barely above a whisper. "Full engagement. Begin surveillance. Monitor media, internal communications, and personnel data. The voice assistant responded in a pleasant tone only he could hear. Confirmed. Protocol Obsidian activated. Across the country, in a secure underground data facility in San Jose, California, a series of blinking lights switched from green to amber. Behind thick glass, a team of cybersecurity analysts snapped to attention. The phrase Protocol Obsidian wasn't just a fancy name. It was an alert, a signal. The man behind the system, the one who'd built it from the ground up, had been targeted. Again. And this time, he wasn't walking away quietly. Back in the airport, Terrence stood and adjusted his cufflinks, the platinum glinting under the fluorescent light like a quiet threat. "No need to escort me," he said to Grant, who opened his mouth to offer just that. "Very well, sir," Grant replied, clearly uncomfortable. "If there's anything else we can do, treat the next person who looks like me with the same courtesy you give the man in khakis headed to Palm Springs," Terrence said with a small, measured smile. "That'd be a start." He walked out of the room with the same composure he'd walked in. Calm, controlled, dangerous, in the best possible way. Meanwhile, down the concourse, Malik, the young intern who had witnessed the incident unfold, was hiding behind a display of neck pillows and overpriced Bluetooth headphones. He was texting so fast his thumbs were a blur. This man built the AI that runs half the airport's back-end systems. They just yanked him like he was loitering. I think he just triggered something, like he pressed a button on his phone and said some weird phrase. "My guy's about to go full Batman." His friend in IT, Devin, responded almost instantly. "Stop it. Are you serious? Vaughn Dynamics powers our entire reservation algorithm. This man basically owns half our software stack. Y'all just profiled Bruce Wayne with better skin." Malik was about to reply when he noticed something strange. 3 gate agents huddled around a computer, whispering. One of them looked up, noticed him watching, and quickly closed a window on the screen. Oh, it was starting. Terrence reached the lounge again, where Ryan, the young agent from earlier, rushed over, clearly embarrassed. "Sir, I didn't know she was going to, It's fine, Ryan," Terrence said gently. "Some lessons just don't come from training manuals." Ryan looked like he wanted to crawl under a couch. Inside the lounge, Terrence took a seat near the far corner, where he could see the whole space without being seen too easily. He placed his phone on the table, angled just enough for the lens to capture the environment. A soft blue light blinked once before disappearing into stealth mode. On a screen only he could see through his smart contact lenses, data flowed. Facial recognition tagged individuals within the lounge. One man, John Carmichael, Director of Public Relations for AeroVantage, was flagged instantly. Another woman near the coffee station, Amanda Liu, Senior HR Liaison, was pulled up as a result of 3 prior discrimination cases. Terrence made no expression. He simply scrolled through the stream of information like a man checking sports scores. Across town, Kendra Miles, his head of global security and former CIA asset, was walking briskly through the halls of Vaughn Dynamics HQ. She entered a secured room where several analysts sat watching dozens of feeds. "He activated it?" she asked. "Protocol Obsidian is live," one replied. "Airport incident. Classic profiling. Gate agent flagged him as suspicious for existing in first class." Kendra cracked her neck. Time to make someone uncomfortable. She tapped on her tablet and began reviewing employee files. Patricia Sloan, 23 customer complaints over 8 years, 17 flagged as bias-related, and 1 recent reprimand that mysteriously disappeared from her HR record. "Find out who buried that," she said, "and who signed off." Then she opened a second file. Stephen Whitaker, CEO of AeroVantage, longtime member of 2 political golf clubs, major donor to candidates who regularly voted down transportation reform, and oh, what's this? Multiple offshore holdings traced to shell corporations in Nevada and the British Virgin Islands. Kendra smiled. "Oh, Stephen, you've been very naughty." Meanwhile, Terrence sipped his sparkling water. No ice, lime wedge, and appeared every bit the composed businessman waiting for his flight. But beneath the surface, he was a storm brewing. He didn't slam the table. He didn't scream about injustice. He didn't curse anyone out on social media. Number Terrence Vaughn had learned long ago, The more silent your move, the louder the impact. He wasn't just here to prove a point. He was here to flip the system inside out, starting from the exact moment it assumed he wouldn't. And now, it was watching him, even if it didn't know it yet. Because Vaughn didn't believe in revenge. He believed in records, in receipts, and in the slow, methodical destruction of any empire that forgot who really built the foundation they stood on. And at that very moment, as the loudspeaker called out first-class boarding for Flight 278 to San Francisco, he stood up, buttoned his blazer, and stepped forward like nothing had happened at all. But behind him, the system had already started to crack. And Terrence Vaughn, he was just getting warmed up. Chicago, 1995. An 8-year-old boy sat alone on the front steps of Hopewell Foster Home, clutching a worn-out notebook filled not with doodles, but with equations, pages and pages of numbers, symbols, and rough diagrams that looked more like blueprints than a child's drawings. His name was Terrence Vaughn. It was cold. Light snow fell around him, dusting his hoodie, thin and 2 sizes too big, donated by a church the week before. He didn't mind the chill. His mind was racing, faster than any school computer could keep up with. Ms. Patterson, the social worker on duty, walked outside, a red scarf wrapped tightly around her neck. She sat beside him, watching her breath curl into the air. "Terrence," she said gently, "I'm sorry, sweetheart. Your aunt isn't coming." Terrence didn't cry. He didn't frown. He didn't even look surprised. "She said she would," Ms. Patterson added softly, more to herself than him. "She says that a lot," he replied, his voice quiet, matter of fact. "It's okay. I need to finish this anyway." She leaned over to glance at the notebook. "What are you working on?" "It's a system," he said, eyes fixed on the page, "to predict things before they happen. If you know what's coming, you don't get surprised." Her heart sank. Of course, a child who lost both parents in a car crash at age 6 would be obsessed with control, with preventing the next disaster. "You're a special kid, Terrence," she said. "One day, everyone's going to know it." And she was right. By age 14, Terrence had cycled through 4 foster homes and 2 temporary guardians. The story was always the same. Too smart, too quiet, too different. At every school, he was either ignored or targeted, bullied for being the black nerd, the weird math kid, the orphan with nothing but a brain and a backpack. So he learned not to react. He learned to watch, to listen, to memorize. He rarely spoke, but when he did, people stopped to hear it. At Lincoln High, one teacher took notice. Mr. Whitaker, a no-nonsense math instructor with thick glasses and coffee breath, caught him solving college-level calculus while the rest of the class struggled with pre-algebra. "You're wasting your time here, Vaughn," he said one afternoon, pulling Terrence aside. Terrence shrugged. "I challenged myself." He reached into his bag and pulled out a heavy notebook, pages thick with handwritten code, economic models, and something that looked suspiciously like a hedge fund algorithm. "What is this?" Whitaker asked, flipping through. "I'm building a predictive system for market behavior," Terrence said simply. "It's just a hobby." "A hobby?" Whitaker blinked. "Terrence, this is graduate-level work. MIT would eat this up." For the first time in years, Terrence allowed himself a tiny smile. At 17, Terrence was juggling 3 jobs: morning shifts at a coffee shop, evenings at the public library, weekends washing dishes at a local diner. Every cent went to buying second-hand computer parts, which he used to build his own Frankenstein desktop in the corner of his tiny room. One night at 3 a.m., his foster father, Jim, a gruff but decent auto mechanic, opened the door and found Terrence still coding. "You're gonna burn out, kid." "I'm fine," Terrence muttered, eyes still glued to the screen. "What's so important, it can't wait?" Terrence hesitated. Jim wasn't affectionate, but he'd never been unkind either. "I'm finishing an app. I need to submit it with my MIT scholarship application." Jim squinted at the glowing monitor. "What's it do?" "It analyzes weather patterns and crop data to predict food shortages. Could give aid organizations a 2-month head start." Jim stared at the screen, then back at the teenager. "You're something else, you know that?" he muttered, shaking his head. "Get some sleep. Even geniuses need rest." Terrence actually listened, for once. The next day when he got home from school, Jim handed him a thin express mail envelope. "From Cambridge," Jim said. Terrence opened it with shaking hands. "Full ride, MIT. Jim clapped him on the back. "We're ordering pizza tonight." It was the first celebration anyone had ever thrown for Terrence Vaughn. But success didn't come easy or clean. At 19, he sat in a Boston conference room with three well-dressed white men from a venture capital firm, his predictive food security system loaded on a prototype laptop in front of them. "Very impressive," said Bradley Winston, silver-haired and smiling too much. "We see potential." "Thank you," Terrence said calmly. "We're prepared to offer you $50,000 for the rights," said Andrew Phillips, sliding a contract across the table. Terrence frowned. "The projected value is in the millions." Winston laughed like Terrence had told a joke. "That's very optimistic." Terrence's eyes narrowed. "The World Food Program has already expressed interest." "You don't understand how business works," Winston said. "You're a student. No family, no network. We're the ones taking the risk." "No," Terrence replied. "You're trying to strip the humanitarian impact and sell it to hedge funds." The third man sighed. "Don't be naive. We'll build it ourselves if we have to. You'll get nothing." Terrence stood. "Then I'll take nothing and keep my dignity." 6 months later, Winston's firm released a new product with clear elements of Terrence's prototype. They made millions. Terrence got nothing, not even credit, but he learned. Power wasn't in the ideas, it was in the infrastructure, and he didn't have it yet. Back in the present, on the flight to San Francisco, Terrence stared out the window, his reflection ghosting against the glass. In his hand was a high-security tablet. On it glowed a web of connections, AeroVantage's executive chain, system vulnerabilities, and media influence patterns. He wasn't just a passenger anymore. He was the man who built the network they ran on, and they had no idea he'd just flipped the switch. This wasn't about an airport lounge. It wasn't even about respect. It was about a lifetime of being underestimated, and finally having the means to turn the mirror back on the system. The boy in the oversized hoodie had grown up, and now he didn't just calculate the system, he owned it. When the flight from Washington touched down in San Francisco, Terrence Vaughn stepped off the first-class cabin with quiet resolve. No cameras, no outbursts. Just a man who knew exactly what storm he had just triggered and who had waited his entire life to be ready for it. His private driver was waiting with a black Lincoln Navigator, engine humming softly. As the SUV slipped into the evening traffic, Vaughn scrolled through a secure tablet on his lap. The screen showed 3 status updates, all blinking. Data collection, 89% complete behavioral analysis, finalized response protocol, active deployment. He tapped the screen. "Call Kendra." Within seconds, Kendra Miles, Director of Global Security at Vaughn Dynamics and former CIA operations officer, appeared on the live feed. She was in a sleek command center buried 3 stories below their San Jose office, surrounded by analysts, screens, and encrypted comms lines. "We're locked and loaded," she said, her voice calm, clipped and precise. "Proceed to phase 1, Terrence instructed. "And Kendra, remember, this isn't revenge." She gave a faint nod. "Understood. No civilian casualties, no public shaming. We let the truth do the work." "Good," he said. "Let's bring them into the light." Step 1. Exposure through facts, not emotion. No hashtags, no press conferences. Not yet. Instead, Vaughn's team began quietly assembling a detailed dossier on AeroVantage Airlines. Internal memos, complaint logs, safety violations swept under the rug, and private emails that revealed a culture built on exclusion, not excellence. At the heart of it all was a damning quote from an executive email marked "confidential." "Let's keep our premium lounges polished, no clutter, no chaos, no unnecessary optics." We all know what that means. Flagged racial bias, high severity. In another memo, a senior manager warned lounge staff to visually confirm boarding pass legitimacy for passengers who look out of place. Flagged code language for profiling. Terrence's AI system sorted through more than 8 million lines of text and metadata in under 12 hours. linking patterns of discrimination with decision-making chains inside the company. These weren't isolated incidents. They were systemic, and that was just the beginning. Step 2. Strategic disruption from within. Suddenly, AeroVantage's reservation system began glitching. Premium seats downgraded to coach, check-in kiosks freezing, customer data momentarily lost, then recovered. It wasn't a hack. Vaughn Dynamics had built the system that powered AeroVantage's backend 3 years ago. The disruption wasn't malicious. It was precise, targeted, and, more importantly, deniable. "It's like the system is rejecting its own commands," muttered one frazzled IT director at AeroVantage. "Is this a cyber attack?" "No known breach points," said another tech, white-faced. "It's almost like the architecture is mutating." What they didn't know was that Obsidian Protocol had embedded countermeasures from day one, not to sabotage, but to monitor. And when certain ethical thresholds were crossed, it activated. Now those thresholds had been obliterated. Step 3. Activate human assets. In a break room at the airport, Malik, the intern who witnessed Terrence's humiliation, received a secure message on his phone. "Do you remember what you saw?" "Yes, I haven't stopped thinking about it." "Then you're not alone." Malik was brought into the fold through a private encrypted channel. His task: begin logging internal conversations, Slack chats, meeting recaps, casual commentary from managers. He found references to problematic passengers, overcorrecting for DEI, and worst of all, an unspoken rule about being extra careful with certain demographics in premium spaces. Meanwhile, Victor Grant, the security supervisor who escorted Vaughn, was invited to Vaughn Dynamics HQ for a private meeting. "I followed procedure," he said as he entered the sleek, modern office. "You did," Terrence replied, "but you also knew it was wrong." Victor was quiet for a long moment, then nodded. "I need your truth," Terrence said, "not to punish, but to protect others from what you've seen too many times." "You'll have it," Victor said. Step 4. Lead with ethics, not ego. An internal message was distributed across Vaughn Dynamics. "Our response will be deliberate, lawful, and accountable. We will not weaponize rumors. We will not destroy lives to make a point. We will shine light, not cast shadows." This is not a retaliation campaign. This is structural correction. This is integrity in motion. Terrence didn't want to ruin AeroVantage. He wanted to transform it, but transformation only comes after truth makes its way to the surface. By day 3, media outlets began to receive anonymous tips. No one said the name Terrence Vaughn, but the dots connected themselves. Premium for some, inside the culture of bias at AeroVantage. The New York Times. Whispers in the lounge. When corporate diversity is just a slogan. Washington Post. The quiet billionaire who made the system blink. Forbes social media exploded with stories from other passengers. People who had been randomly searched, accidentally downgraded, or told they were in the wrong section, despite valid boarding passes. Hashtags like Darsh Fly While Black and Gatekeeping at 30K feet began to trend. But a new hashtag started climbing as well, one started by Vaughn's team. Number justice, not revenge. That was the key. Vaughn wasn't looking for pity, he was forcing accountability, with surgical precision. That evening, sitting in a glass-walled corner office high above San Francisco Bay, Terrence received a quiet alert. Obsidian Protocol, Phase 1. 100% complete. Ready for Phase 2. He set the tablet down, stepped to the window and gazed out over the water. The city lights flickered below like code, shifting and pulsing with possibilities. "Begin," he said, and across the country, where darkness had once hidden injustice, 1,000 points of light began to turn on, each one undeniable, documented, and ready to be seen. 4:13 a.m. Eastern Time. In a quiet operations center in Atlanta, a blinking red light appeared on the master terminal at AirVantage Airline's global command hub. At first, no one panicked. It was probably just a false alarm, a system hiccup, maybe a maintenance glitch. By 4:22 a.m., the booking system for all East Coast flights went offline. At 4:27 a.m., gate agents at LaGuardia and Charlotte could no longer access boarding manifests. By 4:35, digital check-in kiosks across 47 airports displayed a cheerful but terrifying message. System error, please see agent. Except the agent's systems were down too. The backups? Dead. The redundancy servers? Mysteriously misrouted. The cloud sync? Behaving like it had amnesia. By 5 a.m., AeroVantage was in freefall, without ever leaving the runway. In the control room, Director of Systems Engineering, Mike Jensen was sweating through his collar. Coffee forgotten, tie loosened, eyebrows knitted in existential despair. We have redundant servers in 3 states. What the hell is happening? He barked. A junior analyst, 22, underslept and terrified, pushed up her glasses and muttered, "Sir, it's not the hardware. It's the architecture itself. It's rejecting all root-level commands." Rejecting? Mike blinked. Our own systems are rejecting us? I think we've been outvoted. By 6 a.m., social media exploded. Hundreds of passengers stranded, families missing connecting flights, executives pacing furiously on phones, first-class travelers being offered coach vouchers with a smile and a prayer. And then the video leaks began. One clip showed a black couple being denied entry to the lounge, even after scanning valid first-class passes. Another showed a gate agent smirking after suggesting a passenger must be confused about their ticket class. All accompanied by hashtags like "Need to fly while black," "Near Aero disgrace," and Vaughn's quietly trending campaign, "A justice, not revenge." By 8 a.m., local news stations were reporting from terminals across the country. By 8:15 a.m., CNN and MSNBC had joined the party. By 9 a.m., Wall Street noticed, AeroVantage stock dropped 7% in a single hour, then 9%, then 12%. Inside the 34th floor of AeroVantage's headquarters in downtown Atlanta, CEO Charles Whitmore hurled his phone across the room. It bounced off a leather chair and skidded across a $40,000 Persian rug. "What the hell do you mean we've lost all East Coast functionality?" he screamed. His CTO, sweating bullets in a custom-fitted Armani suit, was pale. "It's surgical, not some punk hacker in a basement. This is someone who knows our systems inside and out. Someone who helped build them." Silence. Charles's jaw locked. "You're telling me this is Vaughn?" "No one's named him, but yes, it's highly probable." Whitmore spun toward his crisis response team. "Then stop him. Shut it down." "We can't," the CTO said quietly, "because this isn't just digital sabotage. It's narrative control. It's already in the bloodstream of the internet. He didn't break into our systems. He made the world stop trusting them." At 10:45 a.m., the Washington Post dropped a bombshell expose. Internal documents suggest AeroVantage maintained unofficial protocols instructing staff to visually verify premium class passengers deemed suspicious. In nearly all documented cases, those passengers were people of color. By 11 a.m., SEC investigators had begun a preliminary probe into AeroVantage's public filings, specifically discrepancies around infrastructure investment versus actual repair logs. By noon, the FAA called for a closed-door meeting. Terrence Vaughn watched it all unfold from the comfort of a private conference room, sipping green tea while scrolling through live analytics. "Media sentiment is 81% in our favor," reported Kendra Miles, seated across from him. "System distrust is peaking. Shareholder panic's begun. Internal HR messages from AeroVantage show their employees are starting to revolt." "Good," Terrence said, calm as ever. "Let's push the narrative forward, but stick to facts. No sensationalism." "What about Whitmore?" Terrence glanced at the screen showing Charles pacing on a news clip. "Let him dig his own grave. We're just turning on the lights." Back at AeroVantage HQ, panic had evolved into open conflict. Department heads blamed each other in hushed, frantic tones. Board members were calling emergency meetings. Legal advisors were now just trying to contain the bleeding, looking not for victories, but for survival. In the break room, a young agent named Erica watched the unfolding mess on her phone. She recognized herself in one of the leaked videos. briefly nodding while a supervisor racially profiled a passenger. Her stomach turned. "That's not who I am," she whispered. At that moment, her inbox pinged. From Vaughn Dynamics, subject, Internal Ethics Fellowship Opportunity. Be part of the change, not the cover-up. She read it 3 times before realizing she was being invited to flip the script. By 1 p.m., shareholders were demanding a vote of no confidence. By 2:30 p.m., Reuters reported that Terrence Vaughn was in talks with AeroVantage's largest minority stakeholders. By 4 p.m., the SEC confirmed it was launching a formal investigation. And at 5 p.m., CNBC broke the news that no one thought possible. Vaughn Dynamics, best known for predictive tech and security infrastructure, has officially offered to acquire a controlling interest in AeroVantage Airlines. The ticker ran wild. Analysts scrambled. Newsrooms buzzed. A tech giant was about to buy an airline. Inside Vaughn's office, one of his aides asked the question everyone else was too afraid to voice. "Is this revenge, sir?" Terrence looked up slowly, eyes clear and steady. "No," he said. "This is accountability, and this industry has never had to answer to anyone before. That changes now." He turned back to his screen as AeroVantage stock plunged below $18 a share. An empire built on exclusion, arrogance, and unchecked power had just met its match. And Terrence Vaughn wasn't just here to end it. He was here to replace it with something better. It was just after 7 p.m. when Charles Whitmore, still technically CEO of AeroVantage, stepped into the boardroom on the top floor of the company's Atlanta headquarters. His usual swagger was gone. His tie hung lopsided, sweat stained his collar, and he looked 10 years older than he had a week ago. The boardroom was packed, all 12 directors, the company's general counsel, 2 outside auditors, the head of crisis communications. And sitting in the corner, barely acknowledged by Charles, was Helen Voss, the COO whom he had ignored for years. The room was silent. Then William Freeman, a senior board member, stood. "Charles," he said, folding his hands, "we've received an offer." From Vaughn Dynamics, Charles laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. "Let me guess. That arrogant kid wants to play airline CEO now?" "He's not a kid," Freeman said flatly. "He's a billionaire, a systems architect. And right now, he's the only person the public still trusts." "Trust?" Charles scoffed. "He sabotaged us." "No," Helen Voss said from her seat, her voice calm. "He exposed what we refused to fix." Charles turned to her, eyes sharp. "So you're with him now?" "I'm with accountability," Helen replied. "Something this company abandoned long before this week." Charles sat down hard, but the floor was already falling out from under him. Across the country, in a quiet conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking San Francisco Bay, Terrence Vaughn stood with his back to the glass, watching fog roll in. Behind him, his legal and acquisition team finalized the details. "Offer is ready," said Rebecca Lawson, his general counsel. 50% premium over current market value, conditional on leadership changes, full cooperation with federal investigators, and binding commitments to diversity, safety, and transparency protocols. "Good," Terrence said. "Let's send it." One of the junior associates, barely out of law school, cleared his throat. "Mr. Vaughn, I just want to ask, why not let them crash and burn? I mean, they deserve it, right?" Terrence turned, looked the young man in the eye, and said, "Because people work there. People who didn't create the rot, but suffer because of it. Revenge is easy. Justice is harder. It takes patience, discipline, and the willingness to rebuild what others would rather burn." There was a pause, and then Rebecca nodded. "Understood." By the next morning, Vaughn's acquisition offer was headline news. CNBC, Vaughn Dynamics proposes rescue of AeroVantage on its own terms. WSJ, from passenger to power broker, Terrence Vaughn reshapes aviation landscape. The public response was electric. Some called it genius. Some called it audacious. Some just called it overdue. But deep inside Vaughn's headquarters, Terrence made one thing crystal clear. "This is not a power grab," he told his team. "This is a structural correction. We're not here to conquer. We're here to cleanse. We're not here to punish. We're here to protect. His inner circle nodded. They'd heard it before. But now the world was finally listening. Meanwhile, Sandra Keene, the lounge agent who had started it all, was watching the downfall unfold on her living room television with a glass of white wine and a growing sense of unease. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. There's still time to come forward, to tell the truth, to be part of the change, or you can let them choose your legacy for you. She stared at the message. Then, almost reflexively, deleted it. Across town, Malik, the intern who had stood frozen that day in the lounge, was now working out of a secure room at Vaughn Dynamics. His official title, Ethics Intelligence Liaison. Unofficially, the kid who had witnessed history and refused to stay silent. You good? Kendra asked him, handing him a bottle of water. He nodded. Just still processing. I never thought I'd be doing something like this. You're here because you told the truth, she said, and because you didn't need a title to know right from wrong. He smiled, but it was faint. Back in Atlanta, the boardroom vote was swift, 10-2. Charles Whitmore was out. His last act before being escorted from the building? A final dig. He's not doing this for justice, Charles muttered to the nearest director. He's just another black man trying to prove something. But even that narrative didn't hold. Because Vaughn didn't gloat. He didn't tweet. He didn't give the press a soundbite to chew on. Instead, his team quietly announced the creation of the Equity in Aviation Initiative, funded with $25 million of Vaughn's own money. The program would offer scholarships, internships, and leadership development for underrepresented groups in the industry. And just like that, the conversation changed. That evening, Vaughn met privately with Helen Voss. I know you've been fighting the good fight from the inside, he said. Now I need you on the outside, leading. Helen blinked. You're offering me the CEO role? No, Terrence said. I'm offering you the responsibility. If you're ready to build something that actually reflects the world we live in. She exhaled. I've waited 20 years to do it the right way. Then let's get started. 2 days later, Vaughn walked through the terminal at Washington National, the same terminal where he had once been publicly humiliated. But now everyone recognized him, not as a tech mogul, not even as a billionaire, but as the man who didn't fight to win. He fought to restore. Reporters called after him. He waved but said nothing. A child tugged on his sleeve. Are you the guy from TV? The one who owns the airplanes now? Terrence knelt and smiled. I don't own anything, kid. I'm just making sure they belong to everyone. Later that night, as he sat alone in his office, he reflected on the irony. He could have crushed them. He had the power, but he chose something else. He chose to rebuild a broken system without breaking people. Because real power doesn't scream. It doesn't lash out. It creates. And in that quiet, relentless act of creation, justice is born. 3 weeks had passed since the Vaughn Dynamics acquisition of AeroVantage Airlines became official. Most companies would have held a press conference. Some would have thrown a shareholder celebration. A few would have quietly replaced the logo and moved on. Terrence Vaughn did none of those things. Instead, he boarded a black Tesla, headed not to Wall Street or D.C., but to a small airport conference room in Charlotte, North Carolina. Inside were 35 employees, flight attendants, ramp workers, interns, junior engineers, security agents, people the old AeroVantage never would have invited into a room like this. People who had never had a voice at any table that mattered. Terrence stood at the front, sleeves rolled up, no script, no entourage. I didn't come here today as your new boss, he said. I came here because I want to build an airline where you don't have to hide who you are to get ahead. The room was silent. Then Malik, the former intern turned the ethics liaison, stepped forward and handed out folders, each one containing proposals from Vaughn Dynamics, new whistleblower protections, leadership training for frontline workers, equity bonuses tied to inclusion metrics, and an internal accelerator program for employees with ideas to improve customer experience. You mean, one agent began, flipping through the papers, someone like me could pitch a tech upgrade? Not pitch, Terrence corrected. Pilot it. You'll be funded, mentored, and, if it works, implemented. There was a stunned pause. Then someone muttered, Damn, this is really happening. Terrence smiled. We rise by lifting others, not just in theory, in policy. That same day in Washington, D.C., Erica, the gate agent who had spoken out against Sandra Keene, sat nervously outside a glass-walled office on the top floor of a rebranded terminal. She had been told to report to the new Passenger Experience and Equity Division, but no one had told her what for. The door opened. "Ms. Bennett," a voice called. Erica stood. Her palms were sweating. Inside, a woman in a tailored blue suit gestured to a seat. "I'm Lauren Chu, head of internal development. First of all, thank you." "For what?" Erica asked, blinking. "For standing up when it counted," Lauren replied. "Mr. Vaughn reviewed your file personally. He believes your instincts and character represent the future of customer experience. So we'd like to offer you a promotion to lead our pilot program for bias intervention training." Erica stared. "Me? But I'm just—" "You're not just anything," Lauren interrupted gently. "You're the one who refused to stay silent when staying silent was easier." Meanwhile, in San Francisco, Victor Grant was leading his first training session as Director of Security Ethics. Gone was the man once buried in protocol and caught in a system that rewarded silence. What stood at the front of the room now was a former enforcer turned reformer. He clicked to the next slide in the presentation. "The new policy is simple," Victor said. "We don't profile, we don't escalate, we assess behavior, not identity. And if that sounds like common sense, it's because it should have always been." A security officer in the back raised his hand. "Sir, what do we do if a supervisor pressures us to go by instinct?" Victor looked him square in the eye. "Then you remind them your instincts are informed by training, not bias. And if that doesn't work, you call me, directly." Another hand went up. "What if we mess up?" Victor paused. "Then you own it, learn, and grow. Because growth, not perfection, is what this system was built for." In Boston, Terrence returned to his roots for a surprise visit at MIT. He stepped into a crowded lecture hall, unannounced, as the professor introduced him. There was a collective gasp, phones raised, but Terrence held up his hand. "I'm not here to give a speech," he said. "I'm here to make an offer." The screen behind him lit up with a logo, the Vaughn Fellowship, a $100 million scholarship fund for students from underrepresented backgrounds pursuing AI, aviation, and ethics in tech. But the twist? It didn't just cover tuition. It came with mentorship, paid summer placements at Vaughn Dynamics, and, upon graduation, a guaranteed shot at leadership roles within the company. "You're not applying for charity," Terrence said. "You're applying for the future. And this time, the door is wide open." A student in the front row whispered, "Holy crap, he's rebuilding the system from scratch." And he was. Back in Atlanta, AeroVantage HQ had officially changed its name to Vaughn Air. No champagne, no fireworks, just a new motto painted in crisp white letters across the terminal wall, "Where everyone belongs." Underneath that sign, Terrence hosted a town hall with employees live-streamed across the country. He stood on stage next to a flight attendant, a maintenance worker, a single mom from accounting, and a former pilot who'd nearly quit after being passed over for promotions for years. Each of them, Terrence said, was overlooked in the old system. Each of them now leads a department. Because when you remove barriers, people don't just show up, they soar. The applause wasn't thunderous. It was steady, sincere, real. Later that evening, Terrence was walking through the empty terminal when he spotted Malik, still working late, reviewing onboarding files for the equity program. "You ever take a break?" Terrence asked, smiling. Malik laughed. "I tried. Then I remembered we've got 600 applications to read through." Terrence handed him a coffee. "Good. That means it's working." Malik looked at him. "Can I ask something?" "Shoot. Why didn't you just take the power and run with it? You could have built something smaller. Just yours. Left the rest behind." Terrence looked out over the now quiet tarmac. The planes lined up, the runway lights blinking like code. "Because someone took a chance on me when they didn't have to," he said. "And because this isn't about being the first. It's about making sure I'm not the last." Malik nodded, quiet. Terrence clapped him on the shoulder. "Keep going, kid. The system's not fixed yet, but it's finally moving. And with that, he walked on, the echo of his steps chasing the future he was still building. Not alone, but with an army of others who had once been told they didn't belong, and now ran the very place they were once shut out of. The ribbon-cutting ceremony for the first official Vaughn Air Terminal was scheduled for 10 a.m. sharp. Media vans were parked like dominoes outside Washington National Airport. Reporters were checking their mics. A full TSA unit was doing rounds, and the sleek white terminal entrance, new signage glowing above the glass doors, read simply, Vaughn Air, where everyone belongs. But Terrence Vaughn wasn't in the press tent. He was standing in a dim hallway behind the gate, tying the shoelace of a young boy who had tripped and was too embarrassed to ask for help. "You good now?" Terrence smiled. The boy nodded. "You're the airplane guy, right?" "Kind of," Terrence said, laughing. "But you're the reason I'm here. Someday I want you walking through that terminal and thinking, yeah, this place was built for people like me." The boy grinned and took off running toward his mom. Terrence stood up slowly, dusted off his blazer, and walked back toward the waiting crowd. Cameras clicked. Journalists jostled. The applause built. But Terrence wasn't thinking about flashbulbs. He was thinking about the boy, about the janitor he passed who now had full health care for the first time in 20 years, about the mechanic who finally got promoted after being overlooked for a decade, about the single mom in customer service whose ideas had helped rewrite the passenger rights policy. This wasn't about him. It never had been. Later that afternoon, he sat in a quiet room overlooking the tarmac with Helen Voss, now officially the CEO of Vaughn Air. She slid a leather-bound report across the table. "We hit 92% satisfaction on accessibility last month," she said. "Record for the industry." Terrence nodded. "Good. What about the equity programs?" 5,000 applicants. We've onboarded 600. The rest are in mentorship or fast-track review." He glanced through the report. "And your name's on all this?" Helen looked confused. "Why wouldn't it be?" He smiled. "Just checking. I told you before, I didn't want to lead this airline forever. I wanted to fix it." "You did more than that," she said quietly. "You gave it a soul." He shrugged. "Maybe. But one day, no one will remember my name on the building. And that's okay." Helen raised an eyebrow. "You sure about that?" Terrence laughed. "I'm not building a statue. I'm building a standard." That evening, while the press debated Vaughn Air's future, and pundits speculated whether Terrence was planning a run for office, he wasn't. He slipped into a black SUV and headed back to the neighborhood where it all began. South Side, Chicago. The streets were familiar, but so much had changed. The corner store had a mural now, bright colors, kids playing, and in the middle, a painted figure with a briefcase and a quote beneath it. "You don't have to leave your neighborhood to make it matter." T. Vaughn. He stood across the street for a while, unnoticed, just watching. Then he walked into the Hopewell Youth Center, the renovated version of the foster home where he once scribbled algorithms in silence. It now had a tech lab, a mentorship program, and a full scholarship fund that bore his name. But he insisted the sign at the entrance read, "Funded by those who believe in second chances." Inside, a dozen teenagers were building mini drones, 3D printing prototype prosthetics, and arguing playfully over whose AI bot was smarter. Terrence sat with a girl named Riley, who was trying to fix a line of code. "You're missing a semicolon," he said softly. She blinked. "How did you see that so fast?" "I've made that same mistake about 1,000 times," he smiled. "Doesn't mean you're not brilliant." She looked at him suspiciously. "Are you like famous or something?" Terrence chuckled. "Only in very specific airports." She grinned and went back to her screen. He stayed an extra hour helping debug, handing out snacks and listening more than talking. As he walked out into the cool night air, one of the volunteers stopped him. "You always come back," she said. "Legacy doesn't grow in glass towers," Terrence replied. "It starts in rooms like this, with people like her." Meanwhile, in a boardroom in New York, a group of elite executives at another legacy airline were watching Vaughn Air closely. "He's making us look bad," one growled. "No," said another. "He's making us look outdated." A third leaned forward. "Do we copy it?" "Too late for that," someone muttered. "It's not just a model, it's a movement." They all fell silent. Back in San Francisco, Terrence returned to Vaughn Dynamics HQ and took the elevator up to the 42nd floor, where the walls were lined not with awards, but framed thank you letters from employees, students, and families who had been impacted by the programs he started. He paused at one, written in crayon. Dear Mr. Vaughn, thank you for the laptop. I'm going to be the first pilot in my family. P.S. Your glasses are cool. Deshaun, age 8. He smiled. Legacy isn't built on applause. It's built on echoes, on lives improved, on doors opened, on names remembered by hearts, not headlines. As the city lights sparkled below, Terrence stood alone on the rooftop, hands in his pockets, looking out over the bay. He wasn't planning his next acquisition. He wasn't thinking about stock prices. He was thinking about what comes after power, because ego builds empires that crumble. But legacy? Legacy builds bridges. And Terrence Vaughn, once a boy who was told he didn't belong in first class, was now designing runways for others to take off from. Not so they'd thank him, but so they'd never need him again. Maybe you've lived long enough to know that real change doesn't come fast. It comes quietly over time, through persistence, not popularity, through people who don't raise their voice but raise their standards, through those who've been told no so many times. They learn to build their own doors. And maybe, just maybe, you've seen enough of the world to know this truth. Justice doesn't always wear a cape. Sometimes it wears a suit, carries a carry-on, and gets stopped anyway. Terrence Vaughn's story isn't just about airplanes or billion-dollar buyouts. It's not even about a man rising from nothing. It's about what you do when you finally have power. Do you swing back? Or do you stand tall and create a world where others don't have to swing at all? For those of you over 50, you've carried the weight of generations. You've seen progress and setbacks. You've watched promises get broken, watched systems get defended long after they stopped working. But here's what Vaughn's journey reminds us. It's never too late to make things better. It's never too late to do what should have been done a long time ago. It's never too late to be the kind of ancestor someone will thank silently one day. Because legacy isn't about making headlines. It's about making sure your grandchildren inherit a world that's just a little more fair, a little more open, and a lot more human. And if you're still breathing, you still have time. Time to mentor, time to speak up, time to vote for the right things, time to teach younger folks how to walk into rooms with dignity and leave with opportunity. Terrence Vaughn didn't burn the system down. He didn't need to. He rewired it from the inside, strategically, ethically, and patiently. And maybe that's the message here. We don't need more noise. We need more builders, more protectors, more grown-ups in the room. So if you've been waiting for the right moment to do your part, this is it. Because the most powerful thing you can do at this stage of life is not hold on to power for yourself, but use it to lift someone else. And if this story moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Pass it on. Like all the best things in life, it gets stronger the more we share it.